Hello, my name is Hilary Helkin. For our Theoretical of Foundations in Nursing class, I have chosen to critique Dr. Jean Watson's theory of human caring as a grand theory and Hildegard Peplau's interpersonal relations theory as a middle range theory. Every day, regardless of our nursing specialty, we are called upon to engage with people and promote caring relationships while providing for our patients. These two theories specifically call upon us to engage with our hearts and minds to provide authentic, patient-centered care. I chose these theories because they both pertain to our relationships with patients on a personal level. They both enrich the nursing process by their attention to authentic, patient-centered care, and both require the nurse to look within to enhance their outcomes. The theory of human caring, Jean Watson. Jean Watson was born in West Virginia and was the youngest of 8 children. She desired to be a nurse from a young age. After graduating from nursing school, she married and moved west to Colorado. After achieving her PhD in education from the University of Colorado, she entered a career in academia and began her impressive career developing her broad theories. She's the founder and director of the Watson Caring Science Institute at the University of Colorado, a former dean emeritus and former distinguished professor at the University of Colorado College of Nursing. She is the recipient of numerous honorary doctorates and is a current American Academy of Nursing living legend. Her theories were developed between 1975 and 1979 while she was pursuing higher education. These are deeply personal to her, evolved from the views on nursing while attaining her doctorate at the university. This theory has evolved into its present model, which is based on the 10-step process of Caritas. Hildegard Peplau, the child of German immigrants, was born in Pennsylvania in 1909. As the child of strict immigrants, she was deeply impacted by the pandemic of 1918. She recognized nursing as one of the few allowed professions for women. She was an early advocate for women and for psychiatric patients. She served in the Army from 1943 to 1945, working with combat veterans and thus influencing her passion for psychiatric care. She never married. She had 1 child out of wedlock, who she raised as a single mother. She has a Master of Science and a PhD from Columbia University. As a retired president of the ANA and the first published nursing theorist after Florence Nightingale, she retired and passed away in 1999 in Sherman Oaks, California. Her interpersonal relations theory is widely published and taught at nursing schools around the world. Jean Watson's theories were developed on the concept of caritas, which means love and charity. She received much of her higher education in psychology and felt passionate that nurses and caregivers must also be vigilant about self-care and that care from nurses should come from a heart-centered approach. Her theory is a grand theory. It's very abstract. It encompasses many aspects such as caring relationships, self-care, empathy, charity, and love. Hildegard Peplau was largely influenced by the psychiatrist Harry Stack Sullivan and published her work on theory of interpersonal relations in 1952. She was instrumental in propelling nursing theory to the spotlight. She developed these at a critical time in psychiatric nursing when care of the mentally ill was transforming from a containment to a supportive approach. She also expected the nurse to look within their self for motivation and authenticity. In her role, the nurse acts as a stranger, a resource, a counselor, a leader, a surrogate, and a teacher. Jean Watson's 10-step Caritas process includes sustaining humanistic values, being authentically present, being sensitive to self and others, developing and sustaining loving, caring relationships, allowing for expression of positive and negative feelings, creatively problem solving, engaging in transpersonal teaching and learning, creating a healing environment, reverently assisting with basic needs as sacred acts while touching mind, body, and spirit, and opening the mind, body, spirit to the spiritual, mysterious unknowns to allow for miracles. Dr. Watson's philosophy is based upon models of transformative care, caring education, and care healing practices. Has published over 30 books on caring, and her methods were taught in schools and institutions worldwide. The concepts of Dr. Peplau's theory include focusing on the nurse, the patient, and the environment, postulates that a strong nurse-patient relationship is needed. The purpose of this is to move the patient beyond the acute phase of illness to promote independence and a healthy post-illness life. Hildegard Peplau's model originally began as 4 phases. She defined these phases as the orientation phase, the identification phase, the exploitation phase, and the termination phase. These were later clarified and shortened into the modern 3-phase model, with the terminology changed and updated. The identification and exploitation phase became the working phase. Each phase is distinct, but with the interlocking and overlapping functions. I couldn't really find any model or graphics, so I chose a Venn diagram for this. I feel that it shows that each phase is equally important, yet overlapping and interlocking. Chin and Kramer state that the definitions of concepts are explicit meanings that are used to convey the concepts. Jean Watson's entire portfolio of works is based on the concept of caring. She applies it to every facet of her work and has used it as a basis for almost all of her published works. Her interlocking steps that comprise caritas, the Latin word for love, the root word of charity. It seeks to engage the nurse to practice from a loving, holistic, and authentic paradigm. A key concept of Dr. Watson's theory is to look within for motivation and provide heart-centered care. Peplau's concepts are explicitly stated as elements of the nurse-patient relationship. She discusses the role the nurse must play in the relationship and that the relationships must be based on the principles of congruence, presence, hope, trust, and positive regard. Critical reflection of the theories of Dr. Jean Watson and Dr. Hildegard Peplau. The nature of the relationships under Dr. Watson's theory include that they're the interrelated 10 steps of caritas, which all link to one another, whose purpose is to provide core values in nursing. They also call upon the nurse to be self-aware and mindful of the impact of her own feelings. Dr. Peplau's theory of interpersonal relations, the nature of the relationships are also interlocking and overlapping and require the nurse to be self-aware. When a researcher or student is performing a reflection, there are several items they must look at to truly understand the theories. One aspect of this relationship is to look at the relationships between the concepts. One aspect of this reflection is to look at the relationships between the concepts. Jean Watson's 10 steps of caritas are all interrelated. They do not appear to be chronological, nor do they need to be addressed chronologically, and are meant to provide a core value in nursing. Dr. Peplau's 3 phases are interrelated, with the orientation, the working, and the resolution phase overlapping. An example of this would be beginning to prepare a patient for discharge very early on, even in the orientation phase, though the event occurs later in resolution. In looking at the structure of the theories, Chin and Kramer state that structure gives overall form to conceptual relationships. These can be difficult to isolate. I feel, aside from the concepts of caring, Jean Watson's theories require the nurse to be heart-centered and self-aware to reach a mutually beneficial level. Her structure involves encompassing the 10-step process of caritas. Peplau's theory utilizes the nurse-patient relationship to allow the patient to achieve independence upon discharge. A key part of the assumptions of a theory, according to Chin and Kramer, is, do these assumptions reflect philosophical values or factual assertions? Given the fragility of human nature, I can safely answer that Watson's theory assumes a philosophical value. She assumes that the nurse will provide care from a compassionate, self-aware, and holistic approach. Peplau's assumptions are stated much more explicitly. She states that the nurse-patient relationship must be congruent, mutually beneficial, exercise to assist the patient with independence, and she assumes a factual approach. Clarity of the theories. I initially found Watson's theory difficult to understand and apply. Thus, I feel it is lower on clarity. However, because it is so broad, it is open to interpretation and applicable in a broad range of studies. Peplau's theory is explicitly stated: the roles of the nurse, the values and phases of the nurse-patient relationship, and I believe it has very strong clarity. She did state that it was limited with those of altered mental status or the very young and not as applicable in physiological medicine. The same could also probably be said of Dr. Watson's theories. Generalness of the theories. Dr. Watson's theory of human caring is very general or broad. It has many applications across the spectrum of healthcare. It is also limited in patient interactions if patients are altered or very young. As a broad range theory, it's very generalized. Its breadth of scope is massive. Peplau's theory, in general, has broad applications, but her concepts are much more narrow in scope. This attribute is likely responsible for her success and how well known and well utilized her theory is nearly 70 years after it was published. Importance of the theories. I believe that both of these theories are very important. Importance has to do with how closely aligned the theory is to the field of nursing and how much clinical value it has. Both theories are very important. They have a broad range of applications, are widely cited and utilized today, and are taught in institutions around the world. Both of them are applicable in physiological and mental and emotional health as well. Simplicity of the theories. Watson's theory of caring is complex, broad-ranging, and abstract. It is not at all simple. Its applications are highly subjective based on the viewpoint of the nurse or the patient involved. However, I feel it's a strong basis for future research. Peplau's theory of interpersonal relations are compact, simple structures. She has very simple semantics. It's broadly applicable and still widely utilized almost 70 years later. A literature review of both theories bring up countless studies, research proposals, and clinical applications. Watson's is more broad with much more subjective concepts that can be interpreted differently by the patient. Peplau's concepts are more concise. They also have very broad applications. To compare and contrast these two, both of these theories deal with the nature of relationships between the nurse and the patient, but have very different origins and meanings. Watson's is broad-reaching, while Peplau's is one-dimensional, where the dimension is achieved through the nurse-patient relationship. Watson's theory of human caring was developed, progressively cultivated in Western U.S. centers of learning. As a child of immigrants and working in poor conditions with mental health care workers, Peplau's theories were born of poor conditions and the poor understanding of mental health at the time. Dr. Watson's theories are abstract, where Dr. Peplau's theories are very concise. Both of these were developed for mental health with physiological applications. However, Dr. Peplau's was developed primarily for mental health patients. Both of Dr. Watson's theory is multi-focused on nursing, healing, and promoting nurse self-care and reducing turnover and burnout, where Dr. Peplau was very science-minded, insisting on research be done scientifically to improve patient outcomes. Theory application. For this portion of my presentation, I have decided to present a case study and show how a clinician would apply these theories in their care of the same patient. Under Watson's theory of human caring scenario, John, an 18-year-old cisgendered male adult dealing with depression and suicide attempt. After acknowledging that he is gay and his family reacted with rejection of him and his identity, he has been hospitalized as an inpatient for behavioral health treatment and a suicide attempt. In the next two slides, we discuss the interventions and applications under the two theories. Under Dr. Watson's theory of human caring, as his PMHNP, you meet John. Your primary goal is his medication management, but in your interactions with him, you listen. You understand that his need to be seen. As a parent of a gay adult child yourself, you have seen this scenario play out many times. You have witnessed the pain caused to these young adults, but also empathize with the grief that parents feel because you felt the same grief. You have also traveled the healing process. You realize that often a patient's reaction is from love, not rejection. They fear that the child they love more than life itself will face more hardship and prejudice, and you just want their lives to be easier. You employ the process of caritas, taking care of John, authentically listening to your patient and being present. You work with the interdisciplinary team to bring about problem-solving ideas to involve his parents. You help foster a healing environment, catering to both the dignity of the patient and the family. And finally, as a provider, you are open to healing, to a spiritual understanding that his parents may come to see that their child is still their child and they can forge a life together as an intact family. Under Dr. Peplau's theory of interpersonal relations, you meet John on his first day as an inpatient at your mental health facility. John is withdrawn and depressed. You introduce yourself to John and begin to discuss his goals. John feels that his parents will not come around. He relates his upbringing in a religious environment, his father's intolerance, and his mother's indifference. John begins to open up. As Peplau imagined, you act in your role, allowing self-awareness, personal identity, and individuality to be your guiding light. You reflect internally on your own experiences, as Peplau knew that a nurse must look within for motivation to lead the nurse-patient relationship. You act as a listener and investigator, allowing John to share his worries and discover what motivated his suicide attempt. If John's parents reach out, you or the therapist are ready with resources, perhaps sharing information from the Strong Family Alliance to help support John and his parents during this transition. You act as a teacher, discussing coping skills and encouraging his participation with group and family therapy. You prepare John for the day he is discharged, setting goals and giving him the skills and support he will need to follow up, as you know that follow-up significantly improves outcomes in young adults with mental health disorders. And finally, you hope for resolution and for the day that you will see John leave with his parents, ready to face this transition as a family. Many similarities exist between the theories, but there are also many differences. I began this paper believing the theories of Dr. Jean Watson and Hildegard Peplau were similar. I discovered during my research that they are vastly different. The taskmaster Peplau of German descent and a World War II soldier is vastly different from the mindful, heart-centered Watson. But both approached theory development from a patient-centric angle, which was an innovative stance. They both saw the value in our relationships with our patients, and both theories are widely taught in nursing schools around the world. The broad theory of human caring and the mid-range theory of interpersonal relations are both masterful, encompassing the healing art and science that has created modern nursing. Thank you very much.